Have some more coming in, or do you think we're gonna have a smaller class tonight?
We're in our regular seat.
All right. I won't bother you.
I wouldn't know where to go.
All right. Hey, let me just, before we introduce our guest, stand in front of Kurt here. Just a few things to be aware of. Remember, VBS starts Sunday, and that'll go Sunday through Wednesday night. Next Wednesday night, we won't have any class. They'll have the big, what do they call it? Gym.
Carnival. Yeah, it's like the,
Yeah. So that'll be going on, and that'll be a lot of fun. So if you're looking for something to do next Wednesday night, you want to come, I'm sure somebody will put you to work if that's what you'd like to do. But that is from 6 to 8 each night, Sunday. Is that on Sunday too?
Yes.
It is.
We're
Okay.
not leaving the time just for the skits. Andrew was sitting in the conference room editing, and he was laughing while he was editing. The skits are
But
so
then
good.
make your exit before he starts the songs, because he will drag you up there to do like goofy dances in front of the kids. That's what
Good too.
that's always my MO.
I appreciate it.
He loves to humiliate us.
Okay. Remember Bible Bowl's going on. Hey, the Forest Mill Church of Christ in Manchester had talked about this ramp building ministry. If you want to get in on that, it's in the Tullahoma area too. You can contact Ned Kirby's got the information on that and the contact number, so let her know about that. I had not read this, so on the clothing closet, if you're doing some spring, summer clean out, we can use your gently used clothing for God's glory. Fair condition, in season, clothing, shoes, just donate it directly. You have somebody on Monday morning that comes in and organizes it
Yeah,
from
Miss
the
Stephanie
community.
comes in and organizes it, so you can just have things in a bag or a box and leave them right inside the door, and she'll take care of it.
Are we kind of low right now?
It is a little bit picked over, so we could definitely use some donations right now if you've got anything. But especially kids and baby stuff, and plus size women's clothing. Those are the two things people are looking for the most often. So.
Okay. Hey, there's a great newsletter from the Daggets in Peru. It's really good. You should read it. And the intern that had spent a year with them wrote something. So you can click on the link on the email. If you did not get a direct correspondence email from Jeremy, you sent that out today, right?
I did, and I'll put a QR code thing in the bulletin too.
Hey, if you get a chance, send a note and just say, hey, we read this. Maybe mention something specific that tickled your fancy. Just let them know we're reading it. That was one of the things they shared when they were here that was so encouraging to them. So take a look at that. The Diana singing is June 13th and 14th in Cornersville, so that's a big deal.
In September, when most of us go.
And yeah, a little bit cooler, isn't it? Okay. And I'm kind of looking. That looks like about it. So, just some prayer concerns. Brenda Bell, that's Amanda Meyer's mom, and Rick Meyer will both be having surgery next Tuesday on June 10th. So, I want to be in prayer for them. Roy Eckert, who passed on Monday, he's not a member of this church, but a friend of many in this church, sort of a guy known for doing good in the community. He died Monday. His funeral will be on Friday. Steve Bills is going to do that. Remember Jane Reese came forward Sunday. Want to keep her in prayer. Penny Running.
Yeah, Penny Running is a member of a family I've been working with, and she specifically asked to be added to our prayer list. She's been looking for work for a long time and is feeling really discouraged and really needs to catch a break. So.
Let's look to Dan Schillinger, former Cedar Lane member, was airlifted to Murfreesboro. Kim, we're remembering Kim and Skip. They've got procedures and tests ahead of them, so we want to keep them in prayer. And then Miss Dorothy Estes, remember Hazel Young, who is her neighbor's mom. So that's what we want to be aware of. Anything else?
Yeah, Don Embry has been back in Hardin. Some pneumonia came back. It's likely he went to NHC today, late today. it was still a little bit iffy, but likely he was discharged to NHC this afternoon.
Well, that's what they told you when you were at the hospital, right?
All right, let's.
But I wouldn't, I'm not,
It could change.
rumors.
Well, let's just lift all this up in prayer. Father, we are grateful to be with you and with your people tonight. We're grateful for the guests that we have that will share their heart, for all the wonderful people you've created for our neighbors here in Tullahoma. Father, we lifted up many names and mentioned them in front of you. We place them in your good hands. We pray for well-being of body, mind, and soul. We're especially mindful of Skip and Kim. And we pray for clarity, blessings, and healing on them. And remember the Eckerd and the Schillender families. Brenda and Rick will be undergoing surgery. Janie and the challenges there. And then Penny running, who's a neighbor of ours that we don't know well. But I pray that you'll keep her encouraged. I pray that you'll smooth her paths and make a broad way for her, for well-being. Encourage her. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Yeah, I'll read scripture. I'll let Kirby introduce our guests. So this is we're studying Ephesians. Just to remind you of this, Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's handiwork. You remember what the word that we could translate that was? We are God's orchestra. We are God's masterpiece. We are God's beautiful creation, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, beautiful things out there in the world, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So I think part of what tonight is to look at some beautiful things that are happening in the world and some real challenges we have to the flourishing of beauty among people.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
You may notice we have a couple of unfamiliar faces. They may be familiar to you, but not usually here at our church. Tonight we have Lynn Brumfield, who's the former executive director of Partners for Healing. That is our medical clinic in town that assists the working uninsured. Is that correct? Do I have that right? All right. And so that's where I refer some of the people who come through on Monday mornings or people that I'm working with. If they're working at least 20 hours per week, they are eligible to get medical services from Partners for Healing. And so she's the former director. We had the current director lined up, but unfortunately she had to have surgery, and I know how that goes, so she's not in any shape to be here tonight. And she was so sweet to find a replacement. We didn't even ask her to do that. She did that for us, so really glad to have you here tonight, Lynn. And then we also have Christine Jones, who is the associate pastor at King's Cross Church. We have a lot of overlap with King's Cross through the winter shelter. We see her a lot at the Better Together meetings. And King's Cross, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like demographically it's probably somewhat similar to Cedar Lane. And so they may face some of the same challenges we do in trying to reach out to some of our lower income neighbors. They may not feel as much a part of who we have here at this congregation. So we just want to hear from both of these people about what they're seeing in our community and what they think is going really well and some needs that we might be blind to, that we might be missing. And just to kind of give you guys a quick fill in, I know Jerry gave you a little information, but this class that we've been doing is called Potluck Kingdom, and it's all about how we can do poverty alleviation better, what we're doing well, and then what we can expand on or do more of without, we're using the text, When Helping Hurts. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but just trying to figure out the best ways to empower people, not enable people, and but still be the light to our neighbors who may be struggling financially, especially. And so what we're really trying to do at this point, we've gone through a lot of the material, and now we're just kind of at the point of brainstorming and figuring out programs we could start or programs we could partner with other people in the area. We're really just doing a lot of exploration right now, seeing where God is leading us. So to start us off, Lynn, can you just tell us a little bit about Partners for Healing in general, kind of populations you guys see there a lot, challenges you face, things you think work really well, just kind of an overview.
Okay, great. So I'm guessing most of you have heard about Partners for Healing. Been around since 2001, so almost 25 years, if you can believe it. Things have evolved a bit at Partners for Healing over those 24 years. So basically what we see are patients who are under 250% of the poverty level. Just to give you an idea, that's for a family of one, that's $39,000. So what's interesting about us is that I think a lot of people say, oh, I wouldn't qualify. But it's like somebody who is works for a contractor, or who maybe even just is a secretary in an office. But you know, if you make less than $40,000 and there's just one of you, you can come see us at Partners, and you don't have insurance. The big issue is you don't have any kind of insurance. We've talked about a couple of options to talk about underinsured, and we may get there at some point. But right now, it is completely uninsured. A lot of our funding comes from the state, and those funds require that those people be residents of Tennessee and are uninsured. So you know, and as Kirby mentioned, we've talked about working uninsured, but we also take folks for about 6 months, because sometimes people are too sick to work, right? So we'll take you for 6 months if you're not working, and you work with us to try to encourage folks, you know, to get better at whatever is going on in their world. So in the beginning, Partners was pretty much primary care. They did have a counselor who was there once a week. But what we've been able to do over the past 20 odd years is to expand some of the services we've offered. So while I was director, we were able to add a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And that's for folks who need some sort of medication to help with their mental health issues, right? It's just not, you know, counseling helps a lot, but sometimes a medication will really make the difference in what they do. So we've been able to add those capabilities once a week. We built a really great relationship with Vanderbilt, so we can do some really nice referrals. Vanderbilt has a great financial aid program, so we're able to send to, you know, like Dr. Colin Bills, you know, he will see orthopedic patients underneath the auspices of Vanderbilt's financial aid program. You know, sometimes we'll have to send folks to Vanderbilt in Nashville, and, you know, we'll help them find transportation. So I'm sure a lot of the stuff Kirby does is find transportation to get from A to B and that kind of thing. We had the mammogram bus just a few days ago. We had about 20 folks come to the mammogram bus, which was great. Another thing that's been really interesting is just this week, for the very first time, we have built a relationship. It's called Interfaith Dental in Murfreesboro. Dental is one of the big issues that folks have. I mean, it's just amazing the number of folks that have dental issues, and our only real option in the past is to send them to the health department up in Grundy County. Not very convenient. So what we've been able to do on Monday is they have a hygienist that will come and basically do, if you can imagine, telehealth appointments for dental. So they have some, you know, things they can put in your mouth, and the dentist in Murfreesboro can kind of see and help diagnose things. So I guess we saw 8 people on Monday, and all 8 of those have been referred to see a dentist in Murfreesboro over the next few months. Right now, it's probably only going to be once a quarter, but we're really looking to kind of expand those capabilities. And another thing that we've really been trying to do over the past 3 or 4 years is to, if we can't help them, who can, right? Help them, point them in the right directions to say, what, you know, who can help you in town, right? Okay, maybe, you know, let's help you find a doctor that takes your Medicaid, or let's help you find, you know, this is how you get onto Medicare if you're about to turn 65. So providing resources that, like I say, if we can't provide the help, you know, who can provide the help?
That's great. Thank you so much. Christine, would you share with us a little bit about King's Cross and just what you guys are working on out over there, what kind of outreach things you're involved in? Obviously, you know you're involved with Winter Shelter in a major way because we work with you closely during that time. But, you know, just fill us in a little bit about what you guys are seeing on your side of town.
Sure, so we have looked at our values and we choose to interact with things that align with things like we care about the next generation and we want to have a pioneering spirit. So we're up for new things if, new things come along. So I think one of the hard things for a church is we look out and we see so many possibilities, so many areas where we could help. And then that gets overwhelming. So what we've done at King's Cross is said, okay, we can't do everything. So we're going to do the things that match up with the things that we already care about. And so we have recently started a program with Bel Air Elementary School. It's called Kids Hope USA. This was our second year to do that. This is a program that I've been directing there, and it is a one-on-one mentoring relationship where we provide mentors. We get them into a training through Kids Hope, and then the school provides students. The counselor there identifies students who could use a mentor, and we match them together. And once a week, for 1 hour per week, that mentor meets with that student, and they do all sorts of things like read a book and do a puzzle and paint and knit and talk about how their weekend was and what are you looking forward to about your break that's coming up, that sort of thing. But it's a consistent, every week this child sees this friend. And when you look at the Kids Hope organizational promotions, it's heartwarming and compelling, and you think that's nice, and then you do it for 2 years, and you see the difference that it makes in children's lives, and you hear the counselor say, this student was in trouble all the time, and now this student is leading in class. This student didn't say a word all last year, and this student comes up to me voluntarily and we have a conversation in the hallway. And because of our concern for the next generation, we found a way to partner with the schools to invest in children's lives. That's what I would consider a very deep partnership that we're developing with the school. But we have other types of partnerships too. We partner financially with 7 organizations in town, one of which is Partners for Healing. When King's Cross was first started, and King's Cross is 29 years old, so just a little older than Partners for Healing. One of the commitments that they made was that they were not going to duplicate things that were already being done well in our community. And instead of duplication, they would support. And so we support financially, and then also we support by connecting people, volunteers, and that sort of thing as needs arise. So we have looked into that. We would like to develop even deeper partnerships, but sometimes you gotta start in one place and work your way to more. And so our focus really in that deep partnership has been with Kids Hope at Bel Air. Yes.
What ages do you work with? Children's ages from low to high?
In the mentoring program?
Yep.
Kindergarten through 5th grade. Our youngest both years have been in kindergarten, and this year.
And the younger you can catch them, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It is a little more challenging with the younger students because there's not as much, schoolwork interaction that you can do with them. But I have a student, and we've been together for 2 years, and I started with him when he was a kindergartner. And I think that while I know he does get a lot out of it, because I've talked to his mother and I know that he gets a lot out of it, I get a tremendous amount out of it every week as well. And it's amazing to go into the school and the custodian in the lunchroom stops me, and the nurse stops me, and a teacher who doesn't have a student in the program stops me to tell me what they've seen in the students. So that has been tremendous, and that's relatively new for us. But we went that direction because it aligned with our next generation value.
Christine, can I ask, did that program, the idea for going that direction, did that originate with you all at King's Cross? Was that something you had heard from the school system? Was something they were lacking? How did that come about?
It came about because our pastor, Scott Claybrook, at his previous church had, that church had been a Kids Hope USA church.
Great.
And so he started having conversations with the principal at Bel Air. We went and had conversations with the superintendent because it is during the school day. And that's a big ask of everyone to have an hour of a student's time during the school day. But the superintendent said, we'll try it. I do think that the school was hesitant at first because a lot of people come in and say, we want to do this great thing at the school. And, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And so when someone new comes, the first thought often is, well, we'll see, and because they get all types of things.
Right.
So for us to have, be in it for 2 years, and we're already planning for next year, and to show those mentors walking in every week, we had 13 this year every week, has been significant. But that was prompted through us.
Okay.
And reaching out to
Yeah, it's just interesting because we have been hearing pretty consistently from, people within our church who work in the school system, as well as other people that we just know from the school system, that, mentors and parent training and things like that, those are the things that echoes we keep hearing over and over, that's what the schools are asking of the churches. They can only ask so much from us because obviously it's public schools, so there can be some tricky spots there. But finding ways to allow us to provide for those gaps where the teachers and the administrators don't have the time or the resources to put that in, those are places that we can engage. So that's a really cool program. That's exciting. Lynn, I want to ask you, because your, Partners for Healing is definitely a different organization. It's not a church. Is it a faith-based organization?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's kind of not overtly faith-based, I guess, and it's really just you want to be opening, welcoming to everyone, right? But no, in the beginning, Bill Starnes, some of you may know Bill Starnes from Methodist Church way back. He and Friend Markham were kind of the foundation, and the Methodist Church has always been kind of, foundational to making this happen. But what Bill did, and I think is what you guys are trying to do now, is that he brought in a lot of members from the community, right? So he found folks, he needed an insurance guy and a finance guy and a marketing guy, and, so he went to the community and gathered these folks together. So yes, and I think our nurse practitioner is good about understanding kind of where people are, and if she feels there's an opportunity for her to share, she does, but when she realizes maybe that's not appropriate for this person,
You still need a need.
Yep.
That's great. I know Emily had kind of mentioned to Jerry that you all see a lot of the Spanish-speaking population in our community there. I will say that's not a portion of our community that we really have as much engagement with here at Cedar Lane. I'm just curious if there are any unique challenges or unique needs you're seeing and you all see in that community that might be good for us to know, things we're not aware of here.
I think a lot of it is the language barrier, right? So we've been very fortunate in that we have a great relationship with Swanee, and we have a lot of interns that come from Swanee, once or twice a week that join us. And one of the gals has been a really great interpreter. We get a lot of interpreter folks from Swanee, which is wonderful to have a person there. But we also have a service that's kind of a computer-based video service that allows us, and they have all kinds of languages, and even ASL, and so it's really a great program to have. If you end up with somebody with Arabic or whatever, but yeah, we've also, I don't know whether y'all are aware, we have been able to work with the One Day of Hope folks in Manchester. So on Wednesday we are at a clinic in Manchester, and again the Hispanic population, particularly in that Westwood area, is very Hispanic, so we've got a fairly high number of folks there. But again, I think probably the communication is one of the challenges. And I think just having somebody on the phone that can answer a question or make an appointment has been a challenge at times. But I forget I don't know exactly what her numbers are right this second as far as what percentage of folks. But I think we have been fortunate to. And I think, one of the points she wanted me to make tonight was, we want to be a safe space for folks. And we put signage up that says, these are private areas, this is, if you're not a patient, you don't need to be back here. So there have been some things just in the current climate that have caused us to, think about new policies and procedures that allow us to truly be a welcoming environment.
Well, and I mean, truly, what I have heard, this is not anything I've had directly, but what I'm hearing from people in the community is that a lot of their Spanish-speaking friends and neighbors are a little bit fearful right now. There's a lot going on with people who are part of the immigrant community, and there's a lot of anxiety there, which might prevent them from seeking the assistance they need, whether that be material, financial assistance, like coming into a church on Monday mornings to get help, or going to Partners for Healing for medical needs because they're fearful they may be reported or something like that. And so I think it's just something we have to be mindful of, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum on that issue, just being mindful of what people's fears and anxieties might be. These are still our neighbors, and they're humans, and we love them, and we want to show them the love of the Lord, and we don't want them to be too scared to go see a doctor when they need to see a doctor,
And I think one of the things we struggle with, and I don't know whether you've had any more luck with it, is, I don't feel like there's a great Hispanic advocate in town, right? A person or a group or something, so I don't know whether if anybody has any awareness of a group like that or a person like that. I think that would be helpful, again, just to kind of be an advocate for all kind of folks like us.
I have a question about medication. Do you guys have an agreement with a pharmacy or something if someone needs medications, or do you dispense medications yourself?
Some of both. So we have some tools that allow us, a lot of drug companies can donate short-dated medication to a facility. There's one called, a couple of different organizations that distribute this, so you can almost kind of go online and order, basic stuff. So there are a number of things we can dispense, especially things from the psychiatric nurse practitioner. We try to keep some of the things that she likes to dispense. Then we try to be aware of programs like GoodRx and Walmart's $4 things. Also, we have a relationship with Markram's in Manchester. They have a list of drugs that they will provide to patients over there. So it's kind of a combination of things. But yes, we do have some things that we can dispense for free at the clinic.
And we've talked so much in this class about all the different types of poverty, that it's rarely just about money. Money is kind of that surface issue. It's the final symptom, really. There were lots of problems well before that. And health is a huge one. We see so many people, a lot of the people who come through my office, it may have been a relatively minor health crisis that has sent their life into a tailspin. And, if they could have accessed proper health care, possibly they would have been able to prevent the crisis that happened. They would have been able to keep their job, keep their house, you know, it's just, it tends to be kind of a domino effect. We talked a lot in our staff meeting on yesterday about the fact that, you know, I just had emergency surgery recently, had to have my gallbladder out, and how that wasn't fun. It was unpleasant for me. That's not a fun thing to have happen. But at no point was I concerned that my life was going to completely fall to pieces, because I have the wealth of people. I have the wealth of community. That goes so far beyond money. I'm not looking forward to any of the medical bills that are headed our way, but it goes so far beyond that, because at no point did we wonder, will my job still be there? Will my kid be taken care of? Will our dog be taken care of? Everything was taken care of without us having to ask, because of the wealth of our relationships. And it's just amazing how many of the people we all see who don't have that, and that is really a place where they're lacking, and that's part of the reason it's so easy for them to fall over that edge into that gap where everything falls apart. Let me ask you guys, we've just talked so much in this class about how to discern, like when to say yes, when to say no, when to offer help, and when to say, you know, I think you need to try to stand on your own 2 feet. Can you guys offer a little bit of wisdom or the challenges you see in that, just in the ways you're engaging with this same community that we're talking about? Whoever wants to go first, go for it. You want to go first?
I would say that's a hard one, and we struggle with it too. Every time a phone call comes in, you have to make a choice, and you give the answer, and you always wonder, was that the right answer to give? You know, should I have said no when I said yes? Should I have said yes when I said no? And one of the things that we try very often to do, kind of like you, is like, who can we get you to that is beyond just meeting this one need? Like, where else can we point you? Because it's usually a very complicated situation. We have, for a lot of, you know, the random phone calls that we get, you know, someone says, you know, I just saw your church's number, and so I'm calling. We often do not give assistance there, and we point them in other directions. But we do have a system in place, an application with follow-up if necessary, to kind of help us work through that discernment question for other needs, right? But aside from the cold call, you know, that you just get randomly. But I don't, you know, I wish that there was just a really simple answer, and a lot of times there isn't a simple answer. So I think doing the work to understand the situation, to trust as much as you can, and also not everything, you know, but there's a line to walk about, you know, how far, if there are ways to verify, you know, you verify, but in the end, you have to make a choice, and it's very hard.
Yeah, I think one of the areas perhaps that we're fortunate is that our nurse practitioner has been there for about 4 years, and some of the nursing staff have been there for a long time. So they have a relationship with folks, right? So you know when Susie comes in and Susie says she really needs help today, you probably know that Susie really needs help, right? So that's one advantage that we have, is that you know, unlike your cold call situation, right? We have a relationship with our patients. Now, it doesn't work with everybody, but it does, at least for some of the folks that are, you know, our patients. It allows us to say, yeah, that seems like a real need, so let's point them in a direction, or give them a gas card for this week, or, you know, get them over to the Methodist Church to get food today, or, you know, tell them which one, you know, who's giving away food today. So, yeah.
Kirby,
Yeah.
tell them about what we do, you know, when you have some people come that's making the rounds to all the churches.
Yeah.
And they like here, here, and here, and here, and you've got a method, maybe they use the same one, but
Yeah.
tell them about how you handle it.
Yeah, so here at Cedar Lane, y'all may or may not be aware, we do have a Monday morning ministry that's meant for emergency financial assistance. We provide help with groceries, a grocery card, or money towards rent or utility bills. And people, there are limits on how many times they can come per year and that kind of thing. It's really, it's a well-oiled machine. I use that phrase all the time, but unfortunately, Miss Linda and Miss Jan, who have run that ministry forever, are not here tonight, but they've got it down to a science, and it goes really well. But it's also a great way for us to answer those cold calls and basically say, you can come on Monday morning. If you need help, you can come on Monday morning. And if they are not eligible or they've used up their options from us for the year, then a lot of times we're pointing them to the other resources in the area. I think a lot of us have really gotten to that point, and that's part of the beauty of that Better Together group, is we're all more aware of what everyone's doing around the community, other churches, nonprofits, just all the agencies, all the options. So that we know where to point people, and it does cut down a little bit on that shopping behavior, because we all kind of communicate. We use Charity Check here, and I know a lot of the places do around town, and that allows us to document anytime somebody's receiving assistance, or also check, have they already received assistance for this bill? And so those kinds of advances in technology, and just also the willingness of so many churches and organizations in the city to work together, I think is really unique. You know, when I've talked to other people in similar positions in other cities, they're so envious of the fact that we're able to have such cooperative relationships, because it does make it all a lot more effective, because we know exactly where to point people, and we know who to call if we have a question, because we're all just trying to accomplish the same goal. And that's really good stuff.
One of the things that I try to do, I fail sometimes, but I try to do, is to remember even the people who are, you know, trying to get stuff from everywhere. They do have a need. You know, they do have a need, and trying to find the way to, with love and care, address the need, and not fall into the narrative of you're scamming us, or you're just working the system. Because I think a lot of times we use that narrative to judge people who live in poverty, when we're working systems all the time, you and I. And it's just what often the way that we work them is considered legitimate, you know, and people with great wealth, people with extreme wealth are working systems to keep their wealth. And why are we judging so harshly people who are working systems so that they have food? And is it true that sometimes they might use that to buy something that we would rather, you know, them not have? Yeah, probably so. And we need to guard ourselves against that narrative.
Yeah. I love that you pointed that out, Christine. We have talked a lot about how, you know, the working those systems, it's also survival. I mean, you learn to, you know, we might look at it and say, well, that's manipulative behavior, and sometimes it may be. But it's also someone who's learned, this is how I get my needs met. This is, and a lot of times it may be generational. So they learned it at a young age, and their parents learned it at a young age, and so it's deeply ingrained. And so, you know, if we can be discerning, be wise, and know, and try to know when to say no. Because sometimes that need, like you said, there's a need there, but the need that's really there may not actually be money. It may
Right.
not be
Right.
as material. It may not be the thing that they're asking us for. That need may be someone to listen, someone to show some kindness. And it may also be, the need sometimes is a little bit of tough love. We do a bit of that too. When we have to say, you know, now's the time for us to step back. We love having you here, but money is not going to be our relationship right now. And those are such hard conversations to have. We've talked so much throughout this class about just how it's all about getting down in the mess.
Yes.
I mean, it is about having those relationships. Lynn, you pointed that out. Knowing people, that's the first step in knowing when to say yes and when to say no. We have to know them. We have to have a relationship with them. And sometimes that's really hard when a relationship is starting with, I have a need. Like that's the first interaction you're having is someone asking you for something. That's socially, that's a bit awkward for us and we don't know what to do with that. And so it can be hard to start a relationship from that point. But if we work at it and we, you know, work through that messy stuff, that awkward part, there can be some real good that can come out of that. But it's not a simple matter by any means.
That's good. So I've got a two-part question, and I always hate those because I forget the second part.
We trust you to remind.
Well, obviously, you're both people of great open faith, because there's no way you can sustain being as Kirby is too. What keeps you positive and going, and what's discouraging? What's good and getting better, and what's getting harder and more difficult for you both?
I'll go ahead. I mean, I think it's one of those things that, you know, when you get that referral and you get that person to get this ankle surgery that's been bothering them for years, and you see them come back in, you say, yeah, we did a good thing here, and you can feel like they're on the right track. It you know, it really does make a difference, and we have been so fortunate with the support that Vanderbilt has given us. I want to make sure we give them full credit for that. You know, it is a financial aid, and people do have to qualify for it. But Emily in particular has built some really great relationships to say, you know what, this person really needs to be seen like now. I think the hardest thing for us is that we have capacity. Okay, we have capacity in our clinic that we're not filling. It's a free service, and we can't give it away. But I think it's back to this generational stuff that you kind of started with, Kirby. It's like, well, I don't go to the doctor unless I'm sick. You know what? You really need a primary care doctor such that we can control your blood pressure before you end up stroked out in the emergency room. It's going to cost you a fortune. So, you know, I don't know what educational tools anybody might have to say, all right, because it's been a problem forever, right? It truly is generational. Well, my parents never went to the doctor, you know, so I'm not going to go either. One of the things that Emily has implemented is kind of a walk-in program. I think that's, you know, with partners, there's an application process, and we have to look at your you know, what you make, and we have to prove you're not insured, and, you know, so there's some, you know, hurdles to becoming a patient at times. So what she's now been able to do at certain hours of the day, she will take walk-ins. So it's like, if I have a cold today, right, I can walk in, and you'll see me today, and then, oh, by the way, we're really going to try to reel you back in and have you come do some blood work and get a relationship built with this practitioner. So the next time you have a cold, you can just give us a call and we'll get you right in. So, you know, if anybody has any insights on how you convince people they need primary care, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I also think there's more complicated, like to add to that, I call a doctor now, and sometimes it's weeks before I can get in.
Right.
You know, and it honestly, and sometimes the best thing is, I'll just go to urgent. That's why I think almost our medical system is forcing, you will go to urgent care, go to urgent care.
But our patients can't afford that.
No, I understand. It's just, you know, it's so hard when the medical system is the way it is too. And I'm not trying to punch the medical system,
No.
because it's very, I work in education. They're both very complicated processes. But I also think that's hard too, because sometimes when people do reach out for help, you know.
We'll
it's
see in
all-
6 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, what if they did have insurance at that point and reached out and then they lost, you know, sometimes it is a complicated situation, but it's so funny, well, not funny, but I'm just sitting here thinking when I'm hearing about y'all, has anyone ever seen Call the Midwife? Okay, I just feel like this is, I mean, literally, guys, they did the work of the Lord, and all these things that you guys are doing just reminds me so much of that. From the services, the medical services, to people who maybe not have medical care, just people in their community, and to even education and stuff. Like, it's cool to see sometimes in those episodes how it's evolved, and they just did it. Like, you know, it's cool. They knew their clientele. They served their clientele no matter what, you know. And I know it was probably a little bit more simpler time as far as insurance and all that, you know, money as much, but it's cool to see that, and you guys just remind me of that show so much.
Her sister teaches it.
Yes.
Yes.
She had a student.
It's hard not to know.
She had a student last year, one of our kids.
Oh, my sister did.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
What kind of fuels me and keeps me going is God's shalom, that wholeness and peace that that God invites all of us to work toward. God has chosen not to do that alone. God chose to invite us into that work. And that means God trusts us to work. And I trust that the shalom is happening even when I can't see it. And this past Sunday we looked at Isaiah 40, and you know, humans are grass, you know, and like flowers, and they'll fade away, but the word of the Lord stands forever. And sometimes I think we get, particularly when we're thinking about this hard work of working with God to create shalom and you know, spreading the gospel and all of that work that is always forever going to be larger than you and I at this place and this time. We look at that and we get overwhelmed and forget that we are pieces in a much bigger tapestry that God is weaving. And yes, we have a role to play in that, and we need to be faithful to that role, but we are not the only ones doing that. We will never be the only ones doing that. And ultimately, it is God's working with us and through us that reaches shalom. So I might not see, and you might not see, the needle move very far on anything. But that doesn't mean that shalom is not coming about. And so there are days when I'm very discouraged, you know, and I wonder, what in the world, what are we doing? Why are we not doing more? But eventually, after a pity party maybe, I get back to no, you've got to really ground in that work of God that is always bigger than we are. So that's what keeps me hopeful and interested in participating in the work. The things that discourage me are, you know, the times when it seems like the work just really doesn't make all that much of a difference, and times when I would really love it if Christians in particular would just be like Jesus. Like, can we just be like Jesus? That's really frustrating. I read recently a report put out by Barna, and it was a report done with urban churches, so big urban centers like LA and Chicago. So definitely a much different context than us, but they surveyed 1,000 churched people and 1,000 unchurched people and asked them who they think is responsible for helping with things like poverty, loneliness, racism, homelessness, community building, hunger, were the 5 things that they asked about. Who do you think should be responsible? And the church and religious leaders were low on the list. Even for churched people, they said that they don't think it's the church's responsibility to deal with these issues. Now again, it's a different context. I'm sure, when we look at poverty rates in Tullahoma and we do the math and think of, yes, that's a lot of people, but it's thousands of people. You multiply that by the population of LA or Chicago and it's a whole lot more, right? So I get that context is different, but particularly for churched people to say we don't think it's the church's, meaning our responsibility to deal with this. When I read this report, I was really crushed. I just thought, wow, where are we going wrong? And I do think that it can't be the church alone.
Sure.
It can't be the church alone. But for the church to just say, nah, we'll let someone else, nah. Wow, that blew my mind. It really blew my mind.
It's really interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, like, why would that, like, I am trying to,
Right.
like, think about the context and, like, why would that be so different? Why would that understanding of what church is, what the purpose, what our mission is, be so different? It does make you wonder, in an urban context where people, like the homeless community, would have a lot of resources possibly provided by the city. Does that create a sense of, like, diffused responsibility,
Right,
maybe? Where the church doesn't, and whereas here in Tullahoma, our homeless
Yeah.
population doesn't have a lot of options, and so who steps up? The churches,
Yes.
because somebody's got to.
Yeah, and I
so
think
it's
that is
different.
part of it.
Yeah.
And the of those 5, the one that did rank high for churches to deal with is loneliness, which is an issue that I think does fly under the radar, no matter where you are. That the church, gosh, if any institution is equipped to help people with loneliness, isn't it the Church of God?
It better be.
You know? So I definitely agree with that, but to think that those other areas really don't rise. So things like that, and I also read that there are more Christians in Africa than the population of the United States. So it's
Whoa.
very contextual, right? That there are things happening in other places that maybe we aren't seeing here in our nation.
More than here.
But that takes me back to, like, okay, Shalom is bigger than me. This is bigger, and I'll trust in that. But I think it's challenging when we get to the point where we feel like we are not responsible. Then that's troubling.
I had a question about, this program here is for those who do not have insurance. And I thought that's where TennCare and things like that came in. What segment is not eligible for TennCare that you guys have service?
TennCare is quite restrictive in Tennessee. We did not extend Medicare when many other states did. So you really have to be quite impoverished to get on TennCare. Now, if you're a child, about 97% of the children in Tennessee are covered, which is wonderful. Very, very good. Partners generally doesn't cover children. Our nurse practitioner, she's just, she's more of a family practitioner kind of thing. And the state's funding funds us for 18 to 64-year-olds, right? So once you're on Medicare, you should have insurance. But yes, so, and in some cases, those folks that we really think might qualify, we will help them apply for Medicaid, for TennCare. So, but it is, Tennessee is quite restrictive on who can get on TennCare.
Is that just for medical insurance, or would it be, I'm not sure as far as TennCare with adults, but does that include eye and dental, or just medical?
I think TennCare now mostly, I'm not sure about eyes, but they did expand the dental care
Okay.
for Medicaid, for TennCare, but there are a whole bunch of dentists that don't take it.
I understand.
Any other questions? Well, we sure appreciate you guys coming. It's there's been a volume of information and wisdom that you shared, and we are really appreciative of it. Lynn, thanks so much. I know it was last minute.
Sure, and just one over the way, so I laid some cards out. So if you run into somebody, like I say, somebody comes to paint your house and they're sneezing, hand them one of these cards. If they, we had one of our really great board members, she would go down and hang out at the contractor's desk at Lowe's. And she would just hand out information to contractor guys, because like I say, hairdressers, self-employed folks who fall within the financial ranges, it's...
I don't think my hair.
It's amazing, the number of folks that if you kind of stop and think about it, go, they probably don't have insurance.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. You can kind of be participants in this
Absolutely.
just by handing out a card. And for those of you that are like Don, it's English on the other side. If you
Habla el español.
And it does have a QR code. You can apply online now. There's an online application, so if you click the QR code, they can apply right on.
Great.
Well, then, thanks so much. And again, on short notice, and we appreciate Emily too.
Yes.
Going that extra effort, not just to come because but to find you. And Christine, always a pleasure. One of my favorite colleagues in Tullahoma. We serve on the chaplains
Yeah, we have
Group.
breakfast tomorrow.
together, and then better together. And she's just involved in so many things. So she's been a great friend and a great colleague. So, anything? Wrap it up?
Yes. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to you guys, and I feel like every time we have these conversations, we try to bring in, we're really just trying to reach out to anyone else with, shared mission, and learn a little more, expand our understanding of what we ought to be doing here, what we can do better, where we can improve, where we can support other people who are doing great things in our community. And man, it's good to hear. It's also, for me, just as someone who's kind of in those trenches as well, professionally, it is always nice to hear that other people face the same kinds of frustrations and discouragement, but also we have to cling to those. You said somebody comes in and you see the result of something. Sometimes we're clinging to those like breadcrumbs, those moments of like, wow, this was great. We did something here. And it could have been something small, but it was meaningful. And that has to hold us over for months on end before the next one. But that's okay. And it's good to remember that shalom. That's such a great word that I don't think of often enough. That it's all part and parcel of what God's trying to do here, even if we can't see the bigger picture. So, thank you guys so
Kirby,
much.
I'll make
Yeah.
one comment.
Yeah.
One of the nuggets that I gleaned here, one of the things that we try to do here
Yeah.
is define boundaries and have those boundaries help us in terms of saying yes, no, and providing support. I was really impressed by the Partners for Healing, how well you do that. And partly you're helped because your funding comes partly from the state and they lay down the rules. But when you've got rules in place, it makes everything run smoother, and you've really reinforced how important it is for us to have boundaries and to train the people that are working to know what the boundaries are and then enforce the boundaries.
That's right.
And that's all part of that. Those boundaries are a critical part of the overall process.
Yeah, that's so good, Dave. I think that's a key piece And I think even with King's Cross, being able to, you know, listen to the Spirit, but pretty specific on
We
where you're
can't do
plugging in.
everything.
And so their own unique specificity of that mission has really helped them. So that's something that we can work on, can't we?
Yeah, I think finding our, which we have some niche areas. We know some things we're doing, but, you know, if we wanna find another one, I think that's doable, but really just saying, this is our yes for this
Right.
season.
Yeah.
And that may mean a lot of other no's.
Yes.
But if we say yes and really commit to this, like Kids Hope, you know, some really great things can come of that when we put all of our energy towards it, so.
So we know that this mission we all serve, we blame Jesus. He's the one that gave us his heart to get involved in this mess. So we blame Jesus, but we also praise him and thank him because our mess has been caught up in it too, and that we're grateful. So be people of peace this week. Thank you. Thank